Ready?
So, Linda, we have gone live.
Okay, he is logging on right now.
So what I'm doing is I just opened my website just to, because otherwise people are never going to see it. Might as well show them the website. So that's mediatorvikram.com. So please, you'll find information about activities, about supporting me, and Mediation Vision 2026, and the conference, the points there that we are going to be discussing. But the only thing, actually, Linda, I just can't talk to myself. This is one big problem that I face. Yeah.
Okay, so I am.
Hi, Danny.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see if I could find it.
Let me tell you, Danny, we are live and it's being recorded. So whatever you say, please think about that before you say it.
Huh. You want me to change my whole lifestyle, huh?
Okay, say what you would say.
Think before I talk. Are you kidding?
That's never going to happen. No, we don't want that to happen at all.
All right. Am I on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And is it? Do I look 50 years old and blonde?
Absolutely. I put a
6'2"?
filter. I put a filter there.
6'2", like I can dunk. And okay, all right. I'm gonna try to get. The only bad thing is the light that comes to the sun for the next half hour. And then okay, I think, is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. So the whole idea with the pictures that Linda sent, the idea is now let's do this a picture episode. Let's go through those pictures and we'll take us through each aspect of it, the story behind it, if that's okay with you.
I'm just the victim here. I'll do whatever I'm told.
Whenever you say that, it's like people really think, what do I do? It's just a victim. So
all right, no, I'm delighted. First of all, good morning and nice to see you, and my appreciation for your continued great work in this field, Vikram, and you're a breath of fresh air to our industry and field of peacemaking, and it's a very important contribution. So thank you.
that's wonderful. I think this clip I'm going to take out separately and I'm going to circulate it. But the only thing now is that, of course, I have to welcome you for sure, Danny. Thank you very much for coming in. And it's been wonderful speaking to you and you taking us through your journey. And of course, this, and as we go along, I don't know whether this is going to be enough. Maybe we have another episode. But also, I had sent you an email about a conference that is starting from 18th of May. You have to have some sessions in that. I'll maybe discuss it off the live screen. I will do that. So let me just put the pictures up straight away, and let's start from there immediately. Without further ado, we of course saw this last time, but you want to maybe again something about your mother, something when you start from there.
No, I think I did. She was a remarkable, tough, feisty, very witty. Someone's got on an echo going through.
Yeah.
Gonna have to mute. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, she was that's a great photo of her. She was this remarkable woman, a little bit ahead of her time. And as I said, in another era, I think she would have been a real an executive of a big company or done something. I think she would have been very active in women and breaking the glass ceilings and doing all those things. She was, she came from a sort of a somewhat aristocratic family, not in a Victorian sense, but a doctor and her mother, Adela, was also an early leader of women's rights, became friendly with Eleanor Roosevelt and others, and so she was well schooled, went to Stanford at 17, became president of her class. She was quite a gal, and a very cute sense of humor that sort of dictated what do it. And then she married this rough-edged, rough diamond young rabbi from Portland, Oregon, who was a radical in his or extremely progressive in his thinking, of a reformist in the movement for rabbis, and early advocate of human rights for all people that he devoted his life to. And so this sort of strange matched couple, he coming from from parents who lived in the shtetl in Poland, and his father was a hide tanner who lived in chain smoked and lived in a little town. And when he got to the States and immigrated up in Portland, Oregon. And so my father grew up delivering newspapers and being a logger during the summer, got himself into Reed College, and his career went from there. But they were a strange match, and I think they struggled throughout their marriage to make those backgrounds mix, and in some ways did very well, and in other ways I think struggled. And I think some of my earlier mediation efforts were in trying to resolve issues between them. I did that without fee. But it did, I think, early condition me that trying to get people to hear each other and get along and to somehow make something good out of the understandable conflicts in their background, cultures, upbringing, values, became very an important part of my life. I think that's the early.
But Danny, what kind of things that came up? What kind of conflicts came up between them in terms of value systems or otherwise?
Oh, I mean, it was different. My father's life was around, his work and the synagogue, and being a rabbi's wife was, something that, my mother, while she did those things, really wanted to have an independent work life. She worked public relations in the hospitals and things. I don't think she wanted to be a traditional rabbi's wife and live in the shadow of her husband. And I think my dad was from the old country. I mean, I think for him to accept, and so a lot of it was some of that conflict, and others were just that he was devoted to his work. He didn't ignore his family, but I don't think he paid much attention to being in touch with what was going on with her and supporting her in her things. And so it was sort of an early charge of the battle of women to be treated differently rather than traditional wives. And I don't think my dad was equipped to handle it the same way that someone more enlightened today or more schooled today might be. And so there wasn't an easy rapport and enjoyment of common things together. They had very different interests, and so there were some tensions and difficulties, but they also did a lot of stuff together, and they hung together for a long time, and both were committed to their children. And so but I more than that, what the real issues between them, I don't know that I ever really analyzed that. I just know that as a child, I was often not an advocate for one side or the other. My instincts were to try to make peace and to find common ground rather than siding with someone and or having someone win a victory. Is why I probably would ultimately, while I liked trying cases, I think I might not have been the consummate advocate. I really very almost inevitably or wanted to be in the middle, and that's where I was comfortable.
But if you look at the situation, I mean, I don't know if you would remember, but at that point of time, did you really have a view on things? Were you on one side or the other in terms of how a relationship should be, how a woman should be treated in society in general? I mean, did all those thoughts ever come in?
I wish I could say that I was that enlightened. I basically was a regular high school and college kid trying to date the cheerleader, and I would not today be very proud of my views. I always had good women friends in addition to the girlfriends and so on. I always had both of course, my twin sisters, who were the close people I was closest to, and who were both so psychologically adept and deep. But I always had one or two girl buddies who were very substantive people, and that whom there wasn't a romantic relationship. And I don't know that I rationally picked that, but I felt a great deal of comfort having a sister friend of people like that. That's where I was the enlightened part of me about women. I think in my I'm not sure that was true about my own early relationships with my dating and all that kind of stuff, so on. I think I was pretty much a product of the 50s and 60s and
but what is the age difference between you and Ruth? How many years
we're
old is she?
We're 2.5, 3 years apart.
Okay, but you did have her to, I mean, of course, have conversations with your thoughts and everything. You were doing all that during that time when you were growing up, or that was not the kind of relationship you had?
Right.
What was it like? I mean, it was a friend kind of thing, or was it a sister, elderly sister kind of relationship? What was it like with Ruth?
Oh, Ruth. Ruth, I think it was a more introverted person, and was going through a thing. And in our family of sort of extroverts and dynamism, Ruth found a much quieter and contained place, and was not. We weren't particularly close during those periods. We we got along. I always respected her a lot for her quiet dignity and how kind she was to people. But I think it took it was later in life that I developed this tremendous admiration and respect for her essential decency, kindness to people, and her sort of quiet wisdom that she never brandished or right. She was much more internal, and I regret that we weren't closer when she was younger, and I think she does too. But we were really so different in our approaches. It was that I don't think of any activities that we did together or that we just rushed onto each other. We got along really well, except for the one time that I locked her in the phone closet, and that was only 60 years ago, and she hasn't let me forget it.
But you've given her trauma for life.
I was only going to leave her there for a year or two. I mean, it wasn't like I wanted to lock her up for life. So, but
I think,
she's become a really and is a remarkable woman. She's 84 now, and she's doing. But she's she was the glue after my sisters died and my parents died and everything else. Ruth became in some sense, the glue that kept the family as we knew it together. And she's been great at that. And so I admire and respect her for that a great deal.
The only thing is I've rushed you a little bit because obviously you haven't come into the world yet here on the picture side. So let's get you into the world.
Oh my God.
So this, of course. How old would your father be in this? Do you have any idea?
I guess he's about 30, and they have these from his high school or from his college yearbook at Reed College. We found his quote from the girl saying that Jacob was a really smart guy and so on, but he wore chaps, whatever those were, and looked very gallant in his chaps. And so I don't know what those were. They were some leg things that you wore that he was cool with, but but that's during his, I think, right after his college years, and so he must have been in his 20s.
But how old were your parents when they got married?
How old? What?
How old were your parents when they got married?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
I would guess my dad was in the in his later 20s, and my mother was in her early 20s,
Mm-hmm. But in terms of, I mean, this is all, you're growing up in which part of the US? This is all, I mean, where are you living?
Okay, so my parents met my dad. They got married in San Francisco. They moved around. My dad took different pulpits, some in the South, other places. They moved around in the early years, and but ended up in Chicago. And fortunate for me and for all the kids, because we ended up in Hyde Park in Chicago, around the University of Chicago. His long-term synagogue was there on the South Side, and growing up in that enriched neighborhood of one of the first integrated neighborhoods in America, with all the intellectual content of the University of Chicago and the Museum of Science and Industry, where the World Fair had been held, and we had a very the high school I went to was about almost 50-50 African American and Caucasian, and that was a great treat at that time of generally very little racism and lots of connections between the Black and white community, and people socialized together. There was lots of, it was a great place to grow up. And
But how old were you at that time when you moved to Chicago?
oh, I was born there.
Okay, perfect. So all this is happening in Chicago. So right now we're in Chicago.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, and that's where I spent my life until I went off to Stanford for college. But my whole life grew up in Chicago and stayed there until I went off to college.
Okay, this is my later photograph, but okay, it is coming. This, of course, you told us about, but maybe, of course,
Yeah.
briefly again, you would tell us, because being an episode by itself, why not a quick kind of, comment on this one?
Oh, well,
Him going to his
that's one of the
village.
most powerful.
Yeah.
That's one of the most powerful pictures in my world, and hangs still in our bedroom. And in the back row is my mother. That's my father and mother on their honeymoon in 1937, back in the little shtetl village of Stepan, where my father was born. And these are his peeps. I mean, these are, they came there, and he wrote this wonderful story of his return there, and all the kids come running out saying, "Jacob from America, Jacob from America," and following him around in a parade almost, and because he's the one who made it out and brought his wonderful wife back. And it was just an enormously moving piece. And of course, kept that photo because all of those people in 4 or 5 years later were taken to crematoriums and extinguished. So that all of that family was wiped out. And I made a pilgrimage back there to try to find his roots and so on. When I was in college, I went back to find it on my way to Russia in 1962. 1961. I led a group of students to Russia, put together a group at Stanford, and we went to Russia, but we stopped off to try to find this place. And all that was there was a little cement plaque that said this was the shtetl of Stepan, and there was nothing there. So
the important part of the picture is that, because you can read in history, this happened in that part of the world, but the faces, these are people. I mean, these are people who went through that, and to have those faces in front of you and to ask yourself why, I think that's why it's important. I think this picture, that's why it's important.
Thank you. Yeah, and those faces are they're faces that have no time limit. Each one of those faces reminds me of some other person from the Jewish community, and they're just prototypes of the faces and genes that we're made up of. So it's a very special picture.
And I think the only thing is we just don't learn, and more people get killed in various parts of the world, and we still don't understand, and which Danny is going to do something about. Yes.
We're going to try.
So obviously this,
Yeah.
What year and all you would not know.
Where you got those? These are wonderful. That's just them on their.
Linda's done hard work. She's dug up things. She's dug a lot deeper than we did last time. But I'm just looking at, also at the same time, you have to look at fashion at that time also. The hat and everything. And so I think that's also interesting. This is where it starts. But what is basking in the sun, enjoying yourself? This is good life. This is good life.
I think so. I wish I could have just stayed there. That looks like a pretty good place to be.
I know. A nice, relaxed kid. No worries in the world.
Yeah.
And close to nature, enjoying nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And my gosh, these are early. That's me in my mother's lap and my sister Ruth in the early days.
Very, very early days. Who's that with
And
your mother?
that's my grandmother, Adela, my mother's mother. Yeah.
But she also was living in Chicago, or was she somewhere else?
No, she was in San Francisco, lived her life out there.
Okay.
But became, she was kind of a remarkable figure in her time also. She after her husband died, who was a physician, she became a great believer in Zionism and the establishment of the state of Israel. She worked tirelessly for that. She was a product. She'd been born in the kind of the South Baltimore and that area that was more southern than eastern, and she shed all of that and became, along with a few early women involved in women's voting rights, and developed herself, really grew beyond herself in ways that were always had a lot of dignity. She stayed with us a number of times, and she'd eat her prunes in the morning religiously, and she talked, but she had a certain wonderful dignity and sweetness to her. I was very taken. And when she went into a home when she was 95 or 98, I used to go over to Berkeley and visit her and just sit and hold her hand there. And there was I have very fond memories of who she was and her kindness.
Linda wants to say something, and then yes, Linda. Linda, you want to say
Oh,
something?
no, I was just, this is all new to me as grandmother. I noticed a lot of pictures of her, so it's interesting to hear this history because this is all new to me. But,
Okay, because you unmuted yourself, I said you maybe want to say something there.
oh,
Okay. No, but Danny, I mean, in terms of course, the whole idea behind this series was this. Now you're talking about your grandmother and the value system and her life and all that, which inspired you, which is very important to put out there. That having such a figure in the family, and you, of course, you spend time with her. So all those things, I think that time that you spent with her, what you maybe discussed or what you learned, I think you need to expand a little bit more on that, because it's very important in terms of foundation of you as the person. It's a very important connection.
I think it happened as much by osmosis or genetically as it did by any rational decisions on my part. But it is true, with whatever faults the family had and limitations as a family, it was from both my mother's side, but more so obviously from my father, an early message, I think, of a couple things that you were put on earth in some sense to leave a good footprint of some kind in your time on the planet. And it wasn't about just making yourself comfortable or earning a good living or having the nice things in life, all of which are wonderful to have, but that it was really about your footprint, and that, of course, is your insurance policy for an afterlife in our religion, because we always say that the dead live on in the acts of goodness they performed on earth and in the hearts and minds of those who cherish their memory. That's the total Jewish afterlife. So you're really buying some insurance that you're going to have a good afterlife if you do good deeds on earth, and you make the kinds of friends and people who cherish your memory after you're gone. So I think those lessons, they weren't really spoken as much as they were lived, and I think my father was never righteous or didactic about his life. He made, he had his limitations, and yet his commitment to hating injustice, he hated injustice. And he said it was so important to keep that alive in your belly. And today we eschew the word hate. I think he meant more that you revile at it and of any kind. And that was the bug. And I think it infected all of the kids.
Yeah, but that's very important what you're saying, because for you, it's something that's part of you. So you, of course, have imbibed it. But to have that kind of a foundation, to be able to have someone to put those values in you is very important. And to be who you are is, linked to that. So that's why I will again repeat this, that the whole entire idea of this series was this, that to be born in a certain kind of a value system and to get that is very important. To be, for me, in this case, be a mediator. All that is part of that. So that's, you're just reinforcing what I've been saying and putting out this whole message out there. So it's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely at Danny's core.
Yeah, exactly. And that's,
I just want to say it's definitely at his core, and it's a thought that when he's doing all that he does, what am I doing in this world? What is the legacy that I'm leaving? And so, which is it's really instilled in him.
Yeah, so that's what I've been
saying. Hear where it comes from.
That to instill that in a 40-hour factory, we're misleading people when they say that will make you a mediator. When what he's been born up, born in, everything that's he's seen around himself, a strong figure like his grandmother and all those are very important factors, which we should not undermine.
With this proviso, I think that when you talk about legacy and all that stuff is, to be doing it for the right reasons, not egotistical ones, and the continuous battle to stay humble and to have a sense.
The voice is gone.
Of the counterbalance to this idea of leaving a good footprint, and to guard against all of the things that are can create mischief in that journey, or can divert you, or become that you constantly, I think, need to check your motivations, check your humility or your sense of fallibility and frailty in it, or it has a danger of becoming.
So what you're basically saying is that don't have that holier than thou attitude, something like that.
Correct.
Something in that sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. But that's also important. Yes, to be able.
Yeah,
to...
though it's sort of remembering, just in simple terms, that your feet are made of clay and you're valuable. So luckily, I have some very good people around me who remind me of those things regularly.
No, it's important. That's also important. That's also an important aspect of it, to have those people to keep your feet on the ground, kind of thing. So that's Danny still having fun, enjoying nature. So nature was also an important part. You were close to it.
Right. Yeah, that's another theme. I was very lucky that my father, who was a rabbi and a person of the book and so on, had been in early life exposed to the outdoors as a logger, and became a great student of nature and outdoors. And so, as I've said, I think to you before, so many of his sermons were nature based, and along with the Bible. And he, one of the things I'm proudest of is he was the lead speaker every year for about a decade for the American Forestry Association. And they would have Rabbi Jake at their convention. They call him Rabbi Jake. And he would go there in his boots and his plaid shirt. And they paid him by giving him a trip to either to Yellowstone or to one of the great national parks where he'd hike. And but he'd give these speeches where he just brought to life every tree, every thing about nature, and had this ability that I've only seen in poets and a few great authors to sort of bring all of the pieces of nature together in a way to make a harmonic sermon. And that was a gift from us. It was a strange combination because, you know, he was really a person of the book and he didn't stay in great shape. He didn't exercise regularly or go outside all the time, but he had this continuous love of nature, and he passed it on to me in a big way. And I love it.
Do we have pictures with him in his chaps or not? We have to see his chaps now. That's going to be interesting.
I'll find.
But Linda, what you have to do is from here onwards, what you have to do is keep looking at the pictures and pictures with water in them. I saw so many of them. I think majority of them had water in them. So that was one connection that Danny has with water, and right from childhood. So that is also going to be an important part. Danny, we're going to look at that also. We'll explore that connection.
Yeah, very interesting. But I was reflecting on it recently. I'm trying to write pieces of a book that I've been doing for over the last 3-4 years, and my children keep yelling at me to stop working and stop all this and sit down and finish my book and go to a cabin for 3 months and really do what I should be doing. Instead, I've collected pieces and chapters and other stuff. But one of them is on rivers and what the influence of rivers have been in my life. Because I've spent an awful lot of my days either kayaking or fishing on rivers. And the mystery that they always held for me, more so than the ocean where I live by and love to watch. And now I'm sitting here now next to the Sea of Cortez and feel so fortunate to be here. But the rivers held a magic for me. The flow, my favorite books were, Bridge over the Thornton Wilder's Bridge of San Luis Rey, the Bridge over the River Kwai, Andrich, the great Yugoslav author, the Bridge over the River Drina, in which he won a Nobel Prize for literature in writing about it. The mystery of the flow, the power of the river, and yet the calling of it, of its flow, and it's just attracted me from the time that I was got to the outdoors, and to this day I'm still hunting for the right river and to be next to it. And it's where I'd like to spend a fair amount of my retired years, at least fishing and being around river folks. For years, I went kayaking on the weekends, and we slept on the riverbanks, sat around great campfires. I boated with a whole bunch of people. We all had nicknames, and they were all sort of people who worked to boat. They didn't work to work. They worked to pay enough to get going and get in their kayaks on the weekend. And they took me in. My nickname was Kosh or Swarthy. I forget which one. It was Kosh for kosher. That was my basketball name, but they called me Swarthy or whatever it was. And I just loved them. It was some escape from from the responsible world that I lived in, and I think part of it was just saying I'm not just a rabbi's son and a student. I can be an outdoor person with nature, and so it's just held a mystery for me in literature, in life, and I to this day marvel at the way rivers, the influence that rivers can have in the health and vigor of us all.
Interestingly, that the last symposium that I did in that August and September last year, which of course 97 speakers from 45 countries, I have to keep throwing that in. Woodstock of mediation, I have to throw that in also. There was this person from Indonesia, the Shadia, who was talking about how rivers and handling conflicts are connected with each other. Living next to rivers, those people have a different way of handling conflicts, and the people who live in the mountains or the hills are different. So there is some connection there also. We'll have to explore that also. That how did that change your thought process? What it was like? Maybe at some point we'll do that. But Linda, you want to share some pictures?
Yes, when he talks about rivers, I have some great pictures of him enjoying himself on the river, doing what he loves most. So
we have one whole
you can see
series of
his
that.
reaction. So, okay, I'm doing my screen share. Do you see it?
Yeah, you always there. It was already there. You were sharing a screen for quite some time. Good, you didn't open other things. Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't see it. Okay, then oh boy. Okay. Well, there's a picture there. Here he is here looking.
But that was Linda. That was
handsome
dangerous.
on the river.
But Linda, that was really dangerous. You didn't know your screen was shared. You was shared your screen for quite some time.
Oh my God. Okay. Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
This is a great picture too. There he is. This is in Greece on the water. So anyway, just so I kind of wanted this in the background,
Well,
so you know what we're talking about.
Get
Oh yes.
Because I wanted to go back to his childhood ones.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let me stop screen sharing.
I'll do that. Not a problem.
Okay.
So because I wanted to go back to that part where you had left it.
And
okay. Yeah. Yeah, Danny, you're saying something. Danny, you were saying something?
I was going to say that I think my kids would say that some of our happiest childhood times were on the river with both my kids and my grandkids. And we had these wonderful ventures where many of some summer rafting and kayaking trips with the family and 2 or 3 other families that we grew up with in earlier time that we did these trips with, and they're just memories that hopefully happy memories that are etched in their being as much as they were in mine. But you've alluded, and we'll talk there, but what are the lessons of it, and why does a river lead you more to mediation and peacemaking than to the adventure of litigation and winning and so on? I think they are connected, and in a way that was very important to me.
Yeah,
I certainly wasn't thinking about that when I was there, Vikram. I was just thinking about the rapid that you wanted to surf with your paddle and not rip my rotator cuff again, and just hanging by the fireside with these great folks telling tall tales and swapping stories, and it's a wonderful, wonderful memories.
Because her theory was that when you're living next to the river or the sea, because there's lots more interaction with people, because people are coming in, maybe because of trading or otherwise. So you look at relationships differently, and people who've lived away into the hills, they have a different way of that connection with people, something. So that was what she was bringing out. Of course, she said, I haven't done any research on it, and obviously this needs to be looked at. But an interesting thing she also came up was the kind of food you eat. What food you eat also kind of shows you how you will handle conflicts, and also interesting theories, not substantiated by research, but just interesting theories. So that's what her thought process was. And let's see, Danny in his various moods. That's one mood. That's another one. And then there's another one. All that happened in the span of 5 minutes or
That's cute.
Yes. It's all happening at the same time, I can see.
Wow.
Okay, so this is Nanny nude painting or nude photograph.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we're allowed to. Are we allowed to show this on
Yeah,
family shows or not? I don't know. Yeah,
that's okay. It's my first exhibitionist picture.
First, I didn't see more. Linda, you haven't sent me the other ones.
Gotta be careful with the screen sharing here.
Exactly. Okay, that. Who is the other one? Who's the other kid?
No, that's not me. Those are the twins. My twin sisters.
Okay. So we put it in the
Right
wrong
after
place.
them.
I put it in the wrong place. I'll
Yeah.
take it. I'll move it to the right place. That's you.
Yes.
So how were you treated by Ruth? Treated well?
Yes,
Did you
but
ever
like
pay back for the closet incident?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever
No,
get
I
paid
mean-
back?
you know, we were very different in how we, approached the world and the way we did, and she was much better behaved than I, and much more, in a
That wasn't a high
less
bar, by the way.
yeah, no,
Much better behaved.
that's fair, but she was less adventurous, less taken to the outdoors and things of that nature, more internal. And I was this sort of, from the beginning, this sort of outgoing and adventurous and sometimes obnoxious and a rascal from the beginning. And she was different. So we got along, but we weren't like real pals until I think after our beloved twin sisters died. Ruth and I became really close to sort of keep the family bond. And that's when I got to know her much better and to see what a wonderful person she was and what I had kind of missed in not being close to her during our childhood years.
Because that's one period of life, obviously, you would not have too many memories of. We are seeing these pictures, but obviously those, you won't really know what was happening at this stage, I'm sure, and this stage also. Again, next to the water.
It's really, yeah, it's funny, and it's sort of a ignorance on my part, because until you forced me to do this, Vikram, in your wonderful investigative journalism, I had these pictures and stuff, but I never really, I've not spent the time thinking about it or the impact it had on me that you've forced me to do. And it's just part of my blindness to certain things. And but looking at these pictures and the themes of it, I just realized how little time I've spent analyzing or thinking about that.
No, good. That's nice. It's good too. I think, of course, I'm like I said, a lot of these will be because of the pictures. I mean, those actual images are not there. The pictures are the images for you. Because I mean, that's too. You were too young at that stage to really have those memories, maybe. But at least something will come back. Some things will come back, maybe. But the water definitely is a connection. That's for sure. That's,
They were so cute. I mean, they just melted. They just melted snow, man. Look at them. They were so much fun.
okay, that's at the wrong place. Okay, because we have a lot of pictures of the twins coming together, but so it should have been there. So, but where would this be?
Just in one of our summer, my dad would get 2 weeks off in the summer, and we'd go to some place with a nice cabin on a lake somewhere in Wisconsin or Michigan, and they weren't glamorous vacations, but they were pretty fun family events. We all liked swimming, so we swam a lot even at an earlier age.
So basically,
Vikram, if you went swimming at 59 minutes rather than 60, my mother would tell you, you will sink to the bottom of the water. And so we would wait for the 60 minutes after you had lunch, because at that time, and we could say, can we go now? No, it's not 60 minutes. And she really would have us believe that you'd take 2 strokes and you just would sink to the bottom from a cramp. So we had to wait out.
I think the connection is with getting the cramps, because after you've eaten, you can get those cramps. I think that might be the connection there. But the important thing is
we had a whole list of those
do's and don'ts
of those rules that were instilled in us. In fact, we had to listen to on an old Victrola which you wound up and then you put the heavy needle on it. We had to listen to Dunbar safety records. Okay. And it was Dunbar would do it. And I still remember, let the ball roll wherever it may go, for you can get many a new ball, but you never can get a new leg. Let the ball roll, That's the kind of stuff we had to listen to over and over. And hold your mommy's hand at the parade. Do not let her. I mean, it was great. She had these rules, and if you got in the bathtub, you couldn't have an electrical appliance within 200 yards, or it was going to jump over and get in the bathtub with you, because she'd seen an Alfred Hitchcock movie where someone got executed when the radio fell in the bathtub. I mean, and actually, they became kind of jokes that they weren't as applied as strictly as I imply, but it was pretty funny. We called them Mom's rules, and they were pretty funny, and we remember them to this day.
But were you a rebel there? I mean, did you actually break those rules? Were you rebellious at that point?
I think I was rebellious from about 7 or 8 on. Yeah. And lived throughout my early years with this conflict of wanting to be many of the things my father was, and relishing sort of being the rabbi's son, and what that responsibility meant in some way to the footprint that we've talked about, and to serving humanity in some way. And then that I didn't want to be the traditional thing of the preacher's son and do that. And so I, both in the friends I chose, my activities, my rebelliousness, and my outdoor capacity, and who I hung with, I wanted to show that I wasn't the rabbis, that I wasn't this sort of caricature of the reverend's or the minister's son. And I've talked to other ministers' daughters and sons and so on, and we've joked about what it meant, and how each of us in some way had to rebel and establish our own identity. So I would teach Sunday school while I was at Stanford. It was my one way I earned money. I taught Sunday school at a school about 10 minutes from Stanford. And I think I got paid $50 a Sunday morning, and that was a lot of money. And but I'd take it afterward. I remember Sunday was the day you went to the supermarket, behind the supermarket, and there was a dice game with all these guys and a lot of the some of the African Americans in that area, and we would gather and they would drink. I didn't drink, but we'd gather and we'd play dice and cards and hang together in the afternoon and you know, in this little parking lot behind, and gamble and so on. And it was just, that paradox was, I think, part of my early childhood from the beginning.
But yeah, I mean, that's also important. I mean, sometimes you have to do what you want to do and break out of those rules, I'm sure. But now I have to take you back into those pictures. Let me see, where should I start from again? Because I wanted to put the twins together, but okay. So we are somewhere here. 1 second. Let me just put that up.
See?
Yeah.
Remember, in those days, Vikram, we had to take an actual photograph and get it developed and go down to Walgreens and pick the photos up and
I know.
and all that.
But I just
Who'd have thought?
Yeah,
Who'd
exactly.
have thought? You know, kids today have 400 pictures of each day, you know, in their lives. Yeah, we had one every couple months. We had a photo or something.
But I'm still thinking this connection with good memories with water and those holidays. Does that keep you closer to water now also? Is that some connection there?
Yeah, I'm sure subconsciously, if not just consciously, it does. But I've always wanted to be near the water if possible, and you know, Linda and I enjoy a lot of water sports together, and swimming. Swimming is what helped me survive the pandemic. I swam every day. I don't think I missed a day, and being in the water and around water is very comforting to me. Yeah.
Nice. So this is Danny growing up. Again, like I said, we also have to look at the fashion.
Don't mess with me. Don't mess with me, man.
So whom are you with now?
That was a woman named Ida May, and she worked for us for a number of years in my childhood, and was a very important figure in both my sister and my life. Unfortunately, she left at about this time and moved away, and but she was just this, you know, we were just fortunate. My parents found this, I guess what they call it, au pair, or who was this kind, very dignified, lovely woman, and she adored us and we adored her, and we lost track of her, which I regret, because both my sister and I would love to have gone back and found out what happened to Ida May and reestablished our relationship with her. But that's a nice picture. I haven't seen that for many, many years. But you can just see the kindness in her face, and she loved our family. She was a great person.
But that's also important. I mean, again, the same thing, having some people like that whom you know are good souls and having that connection, I think that's also important to be who you are. So then, of course,
Yeah, to have that, one of the things I never had, and as you can see, I grew up with lots of wonderful things, and uh, uh, the was an uncle figure. When you talk about those people, I never had an uncle. I never had an Uncle Mort, and that you could just go to with the things you wouldn't tell your parents, who was just had a great story or joke, or took you fishing, or when you got in trouble, he'd be the first one you'd go to, and so on. And I've always relished that role with kids and others that have come along, and so on. And I love being their Uncle Mort. And I think it's partly because it was one of the few things that I really missed having, was whatever that figure of a wise aunt or uncle figure that you could just sort of say things to that you couldn't say to your parents or friends, but they had that generational wisdom, and that it's a very special relationship. And I wish every kid had an Uncle Mort. In fact, I write this weekly Shabbos message, and I was a couple weeks ago just began scribbling one of those on the be an Uncle Mort. Wow. to someone, and the importance of that in people's lives. And you think about all these kids growing up around the world who don't have a lot of things, but they don't have an Uncle Mort, and that can be a really important thing.
It's a good thing. I think that's a good part to do. Someone who wants to be an Uncle Mort to someone can obviously come out and do that. I think that's a good connection. That's an important connection. So we're still growing up, and also looking, like I keep saying, looking at the fashion of the times with the.
I can't believe that they dress me like that.
Is that you? Who is that? I mean, is that
you?
Yeah,
that's me. Yes. That's my dad.
This one, I mean, who are these people? Would you remember?
Yeah, there's some of the cousins, my mother's sister, and her brother in that family. It's out in California on a summer trip. Yeah.
But I mean, these are people you would have stayed in touch with, all the cousins and all?
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any memories, anything that you want to share about them or anything?
Nothing profound, no.
No. They look like interesting characters. The men there, that one is one in the back, one jovial soul. He looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. This person here is also interesting. Would be an interesting person to find out about. Again, water, lots of water happening. Who would that be? Any?
That was a cousin, Jimmy Harris, and he was at one of the summer trips, and we hung out together some.
Anything that you did together that you remember? Something you want to talk about? Something you don't want to talk about?
No, I do remember we went. There were a big hornet's nest near the cabin, and our parents had said, you should stay away from it. And I remember that we went and picked up some rocks and snuck up and threw to see who could hit the nest. And we, unfortunately, one of us did hit it. And then came the hornets, stung the crap out of us, and we all went home, and they were putting mud on our things and so on. And I don't know what lesson we should have learned from that, but it was that's probably the most poignant memory the two of us will hold of our summer together.
But what does he have in his hand? This I did wanted to figure out. What is that in his hand?
Oh, it's just a water can that we played water with. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen these pictures ever. I don't know. Wow. I don't know who those people are, but I mean, these are pictures I have never seen. Or if I saw them, it was 40 years ago. Whatever.
And who do we have here?
I don't know who those girls are who picked me up on the beach, but I hope I held my own. I don't know who that is, but just part of the fun there. We used to collect. Vikram, not in your time where we were spoiling the world with plastic, but I do remember that from that age for about 5 or 6 years, when you went there, the way you paid for your my fish bait and for the candy bars were to find empty bottles and take them in for the 2 cents deposit for Coke bottles and other things on the beach. Thankfully, we didn't have a lot of plastic then that, has now infected our oceans and all around the world. But that was my first business venture, was collecting bottles, and we would race out and go all along and try to find places where people had left them and then bring them in and cash them in for 12 cents. That was great. Have that jangling in your pocket. That was pretty cool.
But you have to also tell us the value of 2 cents at that time. What would 2 cents buy?
It could buy you a whole bunch of those little Fez candies or something worse than M&Ms. I forget, but just button candy. Yeah, it would buy you a strip with these sugar-coated little candies on it. And I think they were called button candies for some reason. And you got 2 cents, man. You could buy a fairly good size button strip with that. I mean, you were styling. And if you got 10 cents, I mean, you could do some serious damage with that. Yeah, no, it was pretty cool.
No, but I'm just thinking that when people say that these are my 2 cents, so that saying must have started when 2 cents didn't have any value. So was it that?
I've never looked up the etymology of the phrase. I'll put my 2 cents into this, or where it's always fat. One of the good things that Google and Siri and these people have brought us is that we can trace the origin of all these phrases that we use regularly, and some of it are just fascinating, and they make you more interesting at dinner parties too. When you can so it's important work for all of us to do so that we don't bore people to death at dinner parties.
But only thing now is that because whatever stories you would tell them earlier, they would take it. Now they'll Google it and tell you that you're wrong, but still correct you. That's the difference.
That's right. I heard a comedian on radio not too long ago, Vikram, who was complaining because he was for a long time the smartest guy in his neighborhood. And he said everybody came to Reginald for everything, what the zoning restrictions are, how far it was to the next town, what it was. And he said he was known to be the guy to go to for information. He says, now every fool in the world got it all in his pocket. He said, it's just taking my whole shtick away. And they would take his word for it. Whatever he said, he was the man to go to. That's right.
Good. And that's changed. Those people maybe are out of business now.
Yes.
Okay, so that's more water, more water. Was that water at the back? Yes.
I don't know where it is.
This one we couldn't place really. Well, Linda and I were talking about this, but we couldn't place this. Any idea?
It could be up in Douglas Lodge in Minnesota. There was a place up in Minnesota that we went for a couple summers. They were all kind of the same. They were modest, cabins, resorts that were for kind of middle class folks with fun little cabins and a lake to swim in and some place to play croquet or a fun game. And I have very good memories of them. But our summer vacations were generally a couple weeks long, and then we go back. But they were great times. Yeah.
But this would be some place that only your family was there, and there was no one else around, or were there other families also staying there at the same
There
time?
are usually other families. Yeah.
Okay. But out of these people, do you recognize anyone? Of course, your parents, yes. But
No.
otherwise, no. Okay, maybe some people you met there. Okay, let's just take it out. Okay, so here we have to find you, or you have to find yourself.
Oh my God. I was probably being disciplined out in the hallway. Oh no, there I am. I'm on the far left in the second row with the striped t-shirt on. Yeah, over. That's me. Yeah, there I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at that devilish look on my face, man. Yeah. I was trying to get the attention of the girl in the first row, the second one in. I still remember to this day that I was trying to get her attention. She paid no attention to me whatsoever. But
this one.
Yeah. I hope she feels really guilty about that today. She's probably about 80 years old today and somewhere and looks a little different than that.
What's her name? Her name?
I can't remember. I think it might have been Sharon. But she should feel really badly because she totally ignored. I offered her some of my buttons, candy. I did everything, and she just totally ignored me.
Maybe she was just a shy girl. She didn't know what was really happening. Just look at her. She's so shy, so proper. She's so proper.
I've gotten over it. 40, 50 years later, I'm over it. It's okay.
No, then you can never be over it. But do you remember any of the others? You remember their names? Any of Okay. Then this is another one. Where have you gone now? This one you can see. If you're back here.
Yeah.
But again, anyone you're in touch with? Any names? Anything?
No, but this was a public school. Public school. I'm 8 years old. On the south side of Chicago. Yeah.
No, but tell me.
Oh no! Wait, that's a big moment.
The ones that's coming up. Yep. No, but out of this, has the class become smaller? How come that you have only these many kids?
I don't know.
Surprising. So nothing, no character that you remember, anything, nothing coming back to you.
Not that I see some faces that are mildly familiar to me, but not really. It was a public school in Hyde Park, but obviously in an all white neighborhood. Interesting because right next to us was a lot of the emerging Black neighborhoods. But okay, but that picture, no, not that one, but the one of my lighting candles, that was a big.
But is that you? Is that you?
No,
that's not you.
No.
Who would that be?
No one would dare allow me to. No one would allow me to drive a boat like that. I would have crashed it within a couple days.
Where would this picture be taken? Would know. Yeah, yeah, this one you were talking about.
Yeah, that I remember was a big deal, where I lit the candles at the temple, and it was some ceremonial service. And I remember my parents saying, "You've been asked to do this," and I didn't want to go, and they got me all scrubbed up and everything. And I remember how nervous I was that I was going to set the whole place on fire, but it turned out all right.
Oh, how old would
But
you
it
be?
was,
Well, how old would you
I
be?
would, I would guess I'm about 7 or 8 there, and the temple was huge. The auditorium and those big lights in the back, and the choir master was right behind with those, those solemn tones coming out of that, and I was to light the candles on some. It was 100. You see, it's 100.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, because I'm thinking what happened in 1840. I'm just thinking what happened in 1848. I'm just looking at that. I'm just checking out.
I think it was the 100th year of Jewish something or other, like the state of Israel or the whatever it was, and this was a celebration of it, and
Okay.
somehow I got hooked into lighting the candles, and I was so relieved that I lit them all and didn't set the place on fire.
Okay, so they say, yeah. So they say 1848, the first step towards the Jewish community.
Yeah.
For the Viennese Jews. Okay. So something like a 1848 revolution kind of thing. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so this we were wondering, Linda and I, why were you strangulating a dog? What happened to you? What came over you?
Oh my God.
Why would
That
you do
picture,
that?
I should have paid to
I already not put
do
it there.
that.
Yeah.
I think that's a Photoshop that they're going to put that out on Twitter when Elon, after Elon buys it, and I'm going to be accused of being a dog killer. And I'm hoping that what I was doing was kind of gently massaging the neck and scratching him, not strangling this poor little puppy. But I
wish the dog knew that.
Otherwise, it doesn't look very delicate, does it? But my memory of just that we didn't have pets growing up. I loved pets, and that this was a dog in one of the vacations that was around, and we used to sit and pet him and scratch his stomach and all that kind of stuff. But I'll defend to the death that I wasn't strangling that dog.
But Danny, with the facts and circumstances about what you've just told us about yourself, what the kind of person, no one is going to believe you. Everyone is going to believe us saying this is what you're doing.
There's the proof that I know.
This is the culmination of everything that you've told us about yourself.
Fake news, Vikram. Fake news.
Look, I already told Linda we're going to blackmail him on this. So for sure, this was going to happen. Okay, so more water, more interesting games in the water.
Yeah.
But any idea who those other people are?
No.
You have a better picture there sometime. Yes. Who would that be?
Yeah, that's me in Lake Tahoe, I think, on a summer vacation, and that's my older cousin Neville, who was the son of my mother's sister, blah blah blah. And he recently passed away. He was a nice guy, and that was a lot of fun because we had access to that steamboat, to that motorboat, and we used to go out on the lake, and he'd take me and sitting in the back, and I liked that. Those are nice memories. I never stayed. I stayed in touch with him, but I was never close to him afterwards. So he wasn't a important figure in my life, but those are nice memories.
But he was, must have been what, maybe 12, 13 years older or something like that?
Yeah, he's in his teens.
Mm. So he must be in the 90s when he passed away.
And that's Ruth and Me.
But what is this? This is that a car? What is it? What
Oh,
you're
that's a
sitting on?
boat.
Is that a
It's
boat?
a boat.
Okay, okay, that's a boat.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yes, this is an interesting trip somewhere.
Yeah.
Niagara Falls or something. What? Where is that?
Don't remember where, but I don't remember it. Yeah, that's
But what are you? Are you a lefty?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you good. You notice that you're very observant. Yeah, I grew up left-handed and then became quasi-ambidextrous, partly because I tore my rotator cuff muscle in my left side twice. And kayaking, we used to get your paddle stuck out in the rapids sometime, and it would just rip your rotator cuff, but that didn't stop us from doing it. But but I was a real lefty growing up, and loved baseball. This is from I think somewhere right after camp, baseball teams, but I really played much more basketball than baseball. Basketball became my favorite sport, and I played it endlessly in the neighborhood playgrounds and so on. But
there was no issue being a lefty. I mean, it wasn't something that people looked at as being someone being different. Was it? There was nothing like that, was it?
Yeah.
There was no issue with that.
It was in some degree, but I mean, I didn't need to go to left-hander therapy groups or anything because they treated you as an oddity, but it was different. And I do remember thinking that it's both a benefit and a burden. There were times when you wanted to do something and it was right hand oriented and it was more difficult and all that stuff. But I early on became quasi ambidextrous. I mean, I fished with both hands, and I played basketball. I could dribble with both hands, all that kind of stuff. So I became fairly ambidextrous.
But I used to hear some.
But look at that stance, man. That's
coming. It's coming up more.
If I were a baseball scout, I'd get that kid to sign up early.
But I was just thinking there was some kid I knew about whose parents forced the lefty to become a righty, which was not very good for the kid. So those
sure. No, I didn't suffer any favored hand distinction. I at one point did look up about left-handers and famous left-handers. And so this is all the camp and my 12, 13-year-old period. And
I put these photographs together only because of the baseball part of it. Then this.
Yeah.
But you did play. I mean, you did play baseball. Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So what in school you had to play a sport, something like that? Did you have to play something?
No. I loved sports. It was great.
So it was. This is another.
Those are just buddies at camp. These were the camp cabins where we went up to Camp Strongheart in Wisconsin or Michigan. I can't remember what it was. And I went there for about 5 years in the summers. And I think they were about a month long. It was terrific generally.
Good fun. Where would this be? Any idea?
No.
See water at the back for sure. So water is a part of it.
I have never looked at most of these pictures. This is really fun for me. I don't ever remember. Um,
That's all dressed up for the photograph. That's not
yeah,
you.
something. Those things look exactly. I think it's someone else in my body, because I remember even from that stage, that must have been my mother who wanted to put me in some little shorts and a nice shirt and so on. But I was, I don't remember being that person.
Okay, so this is interesting. Who would this be?
Look at that. Look at that.
I know.
That's when my criminal, that's the beginning of my criminal life. Can't you tell? Look at that. Look, would you want your daughter to be around someone like that? No. This is one of my cousins and her fiance or something, and Joanne or whatever at some event. And I used to, then I was trying to make my curly hair be straight so that I could look like Ricky Valens or whoever the pop singer was with cool straight hair. And I had emerging curly hair, but I used to like stand in front of the mirror trying to put some kind of goop on it to make it look straight so I could be extra cool.
But what was that whole pose about? What was that pose? What were you trying to tell us?
Don't ask me, man. I saw a kid like that, I'd send him right to juvenile court. I mean, I wouldn't, do not pass, do not stop, do not pass, go, just get him right into juvenile court.
Okay, this is okay. Then now he's back. He's okay. That was just a pose. That was just a pose for the camera. That's it. He's okay.
Yeah.
Now the twins come in.
Yeah, that's actually an important photograph. Just a wonderful picture. Gee, wow. The kids had just come home, the twins from the hospital. I remember we made a chair to carry my mother up the stairs. We lived on the second floor, and to carry my mother up the stairs from the hospital when she came home. She wasn't like Pearl Buck having her kids while she was out, working in the field. But she came home, and those were the twins at an earlier age. And my father has them there. When you take the Torahs out of the Ark, the Holy Ark, the Torah, which contains the first 5 books of the Bible, that's the way you hold them, in your arms that way. And it's astounding to me that they both look like they're looking at each other in their own world, but he's holding them like the Torah. It's just a wonderful picture. And my sister, I'm of course sort of part there and part don't want to be posing for pictures. You can tell my look.
But how old are you at this stage?
I guess I was. Oh no, wait. I'm 6. No, that's right. I'm 6.5 years older than them. So I would guess I was 7.
Well, you look much older. I mean, I know, of course, I don't not know what 7-year-old kids look like, but you look older. I mean, I'm just thinking that.
Yeah, I must, but I would have guessed older too. But I know I'm 6.5 years older than the twins and 2.5 years younger than Ruth.
But what's going on in your mind when these 2 kids come into the house? I mean, what is your reaction?
It was joyous from the beginning. I mean, it was never like, oh, they're going to come and displace us and so on. It was a great gift, and we became pals from the time they could crawl, and had each other's back and covered for each other, and got into lots of mischief together, and they were just, it was all just wholesome.
Well, when I look at him, he seems like a very proud brother. That's what his face looks like. It's like happy. This is, of course. Okay, another pose.
Okay, that's a more, I mean, I think a more realistic picture. Notice how cool I rolled up my Levi's. It was very, very important is how you cuffed your Levi's, Vikram. And if you ever want me to show you how to do it properly, I'll be glad to spend the time with you because it was critical just how you did that. But this is the house we moved into. It was in terrible condition, but it was, I think it was $18,000, which was a lot of money then, but it was the first time we'd owned a house. And my father was even more inept than I am at mechanical things. He couldn't put a plug in the wall or a hammer or a nail in without invoking the name of the Lord in vain. And I've carried on that tradition proudly. Tried to improve a little bit, but it was not a gift in the genes. And this house needed all sorts of repairs and things and so on, and it was probably the wrong place for us. But it was pretty good childhood memories from that.
But
It's
what
great.
was it?
And it was,
the name?
by the way, it was right next to, it was on 48th Street. It was right next to an empty lot where we played baseball and stuff. It was just a big empty lot, and we could throw the football and play softball, but it had no straight lot. And we had a big picture window in the inevitably on Friday night when we'd be having the Sabbath service, someone would break the window with a softball or hit the window really hard with the softball shaking. My father would go out chasing them. Don't you respect the Sabbath and whatever? And of course the twins and I would be laughing as this great dignified rabbi would be chasing the kids down the street for disturbing our Sabbath with their softball. It was a great neighborhood to grow up in.
And anyone that you stayed in touch with? Anyone that you remember?
Yes, I have a couple of early friends, and they that I stayed in at least contact with. No one I'm real close to, but a couple of the people that I've stayed in touch with, and we send things to each other once in a while.
That's so suited.
Yeah, that's
money.
probably for my probably for my bar mitzvah. I think so.
Okay, we have some of your bar mitzvah. That's this one.
Yeah.
But the other people
Yeah.
there, do you remember who those people are? I mean,
Yeah, that's my grandmother, Adela, my mother, of course, and then our next door neighbor, my mother's best friend, Ruth Debs, and we stayed in touch with them for a long time. And my dad, this is after the ceremony, and I've given my speech and recited the Torah, and all that pressure was off of you because everybody came to the rabbi's son's bar mitzvah, and was supposed to, and I was so nervous. And so I can see my dad saying to me, "You did a great job, son," and then I'm so relieved. Yeah.
but what is the speech? Any idea? What, you remember some parts of that?
No, I'm ashamed to say I don't remember. I remember my section that you had that was depending on the time of year was a very boring section of Deuteronomy about how many cubics feet between this and that. I don't remember, but I gave, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar mitzvahs, and I really don't remember what my speech is. It's funny, I've saved both of the talks that I gave to my sons on their bar and we embarrassed them also with the songs that my sisters and I wrote to Aretha Franklin and Respect and the others. But I don't remember mine. Shame I don't.
But what is
but
the
I'm-
kind of thing that you're supposed to say? What is, because I haven't been to one, so what really are you supposed to talk about?
I don't think you're commanded. Here's what, for those who don't know, the bar mitzvah or the bat mitzvah, and there are more and more young Jewish women who are being bat mitzvah. In the past, it was sort of probably 10% women went ahead and all the men. It's a rite of passage at age 13. It was to symbolize the coming into manhood or womanhood. Very similar to other tribal events in other cultures. I would have much preferred to have gone out and had to spear a tiger or a cheetah than to stand in front of the Holy Ark. And I think, but you had to study the Hebrew for a period of time, and your section of this, your sidra, your section of the Torah, and recite it. That was the big deal before the Holy Ark. And then the rabbi, who wasn't always your father, I just happened to have a father, would bless you. And that was a kind of a holy moment. You'd raise your hand and with your fingers spread to give the blessing. And they're standing in front of the Holy Ark after you had recited in the original Hebrew your section of the Bible that came at that time of the year. And then sometimes you would give a little, the bar mitzvah would give a little talk, 3 minutes, thanking everybody for the cufflinks that they gave you and telling them that you liked them when you really didn't. And then and usually some theme that was connected to that section of the Bible. So if you might talk about Daniel, and I think mine was on Daniel and the Lion's Den, because that had the same name, and talked about being having the courage to come out of the lion's den and embrace life. And so it was a really good memory. I'm much more keener on those kinds of, I don't think I appreciated enough at the time. I think those rites of emergence into adulthood for both men and women now, luckily women are included and weren't so much in my time. Those rites of passage are really important. And I've had a fascination studying them in other cultures. And I think those are the kinds of traditions to pass on to your children. We so lack mythological characters. We often now overlook because everybody can watch videos and cartoons, the wonders of storytelling and passing on history through those stories and myths and figures, which I think was a very important part of culture. And we've homogenized so much of it now into what we watch and see. So I always am fascinated by those kinds of rights for people. And I reread again when I was looking for some stuff the other day, this wonderful story of an African tribe in which at birth, when a couple are together and they decide to marry, they create a song, a theme or song that they sing. And when their child is born, that song becomes that kid's song. And whenever an event happened, he caught his first fish, or he brought back dinner. The tribe would gather together, and they knew everybody's song, and they would sing their song. And then when the child would mate and find, he and his bride would sing the song at their wedding and do it. And when you were on your deathbed and the tribe would gather and sing that was your individual identity, your song in the village. And those kinds of rites just have so much meaning to me, and miss them a lot in our culture and others. So when I see cultures where they're adhering to those different rites and customs, they're very powerful. And I think we're leaving a lot of our children without those. And they're what build character and many things. And they give you a certain something to hold on to that is just so important to implant. So anyway, that brings me back to that time. And while at the time, I don't know that I appreciated it as much, my bar mitzvah, it's a wonderful ritual. And I'm just thinking about both my son's bar mitzvahs and how important those were to me.
Well, but from this tribe story, that song story, but I'm just thinking that maybe because you connect that child with those happy moments, so whenever that song plays, at least there is something that a person connects to, some part in the memory or something. It must be interesting. There is some more to it. I think some things have been thought about, but the logic maybe is not being passed on. But these things are some way for the psychology and all of the kid. I'm sure it works well.
Well, I've talked to other kids today sometimes about whether they have those figures or those mythologies, and they don't. And I said, well, is there someone is there a hero factor? And it's Spider-Man or Batman. With cartoon characters are their only legends and myths. I mean, we had Paul Bunyan and thing and so on. And in other places in Nordic culture, you had Thor, the thing. Now, a lot of it was tied to warfare and not such great things, and male traits of dominance or strength and all that. And so some of those myth stories and so on were probably not so great, but many of them in those cultures had people that showed bravery and kindness and wisdom in things. And our kids don't really have a lot of those figures. It's a shame. Storytelling, not having everything recorded today as we can today in a photograph or so on. And I'm stunned by these photos, by the way. I just forgotten that we had all these from my childhood. But it's we now over-record everything, to make a record of it. But the art of storytelling, rather, which was the way that cultures passed on their culture, I mean, and so on, that's gone in a lot of places. And shame.
So that's what we're doing, Danny. That's why we're recording your story. This is what is required. These are the stories that have to go out there. That's exactly the idea behind this is that. But of course, we have to thank Linda for putting all these 4 pictures together.
I do indeed. And it was an act of kindness and so on, because first I wouldn't been able to find them, but it was very thoughtful to do this. Very appreciative.
So that's the little man now.
Yeah,
The boy is grown
yeah,
up.
now I'm a man. Look at that.
But are you treated differently in the house after this? Is there some change there?
No, no, no. Take the garbage out. Get it on. No,
Anyone you remember?
yes, one of their that's my father at an event at the temple, and my mother, and I don't know what it was, some your anniversary, and I think the gentleman to the right of my mother with the glasses on and the white hair is Arthur Goldberg, who was a member of our congregation and became a very, very close friend of my father's and mother's, but especially he later became the Secretary of Labor and then was on the Supreme Court, and then Lyndon Johnson talked him out of it and to give up his seat and take over the head of the UN, allegedly to kind of get us out of Vietnam. And then Lyndon broke stride with Justice Goldberg, but he did many things. He became probably the leading Jewish figure in the United States. He was a great labor secretary and a very good justice of the Supreme Court. I wish he stayed on there. But he was a good friend to the family throughout, and he was very kind to my father, and he brokered getting my dad appointed by President Kennedy to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, and that's what started my father's move in the civil rights movement, which then captivated the next 15 or 20 years of his life in many ways. And I think the person next to him is Newt Minow, who became a very famous, the general counsel for the president, but I'm not sure of that. And so the interesting backstory to that is that that jumps ahead a bit, but importantly, well, maybe not. Had already happened in 1942 or 3. And if I've told the story, you stop me. My father was appointed a chaplain in the Navy, and he held a dinner at the congregation to say goodbye and how proud he was as an immigrant child to go and serve the country as a chaplain in the Pacific Front, where they were in conflict. And I wasn't, of course, I was a little baby then, but I remember my parents telling me about how they do these dinners, and when he was on his way to being shipped out, he got notice that his orders had been canceled, that he was no longer a chaplain in the Navy and his orders were canceled. And he was very embarrassed by it and they wouldn't tell him why. And so he went back and he served the war at the temple, and then of course ministered to many of the families where they'd lost a son, combat and so on. And he so much believed in the country and patriotism. And after the war was over, Arthur Goldberg, that man there, who was very highly placed in it, said, I'm going to find out what happened. And he went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and he said, get me this man's file. And they did. And on the front of it was stamped. So it was a stamped classification that my father was a premature anti-fascist. It gives you some idea of what was going on in our country at that time. This is prior to the McCarthy communist witch hunts and other stuff. but it meant that in 1937, on that trip that I showed you the picture of, and on the boat going over, my father had signed a number of petitions in support of the young Americans who were volunteering to go over and fight against Franco in Spain. And Franco, of course, then became a great fascist leader, and he was eventually defeated and so on. But a lot of these well-intentioned Americans had gone over there to fight for the against Franco. And but my mother wrote about sitting up on the ship on the deck, because these kids were stowed away somewhere, and they'd come up and they were singing these songs, and these young brave kids to go over and fight against fascism in Spain. And my father became a supporter of them, but to the Navy, when they reviewed his file and saw that he had signed these petitions, decided it was too early to come out against Franco and his fascist ways. So they suspected that maybe he was pinko. Maybe he was a secret commie, but certainly not worthy of a Navy, of a naval thing. And my father lived with that hurt for, almost a decade, of feeling he'd come over, he built this wonderful life, he loved the country, did that, and he wasn't really one of them because he'd been called this premature anti-fascist, which was really, really something that the Navy had made a classification of that. Arthur Goldman they got his file, they got it to him, and he was then appointed he was very close to Adlai Stevenson, another great American and a great, he'd been the governor of Illinois and all that stuff. But they got him this high appointment, and he went and worked in the South, bringing about allowing African Americans to get into the electrical and other trade unions, which were the key to making a living in many of these states, but they were discriminated against. And so they took the civil rights statutes and so on and opened those up as one of the ways of helping with integration. And he was kind of restored. He told me not until he got to the Canadian border, and he had just gotten his certificate signed by the president appointing him to this commission, and they asked him at the Canadian border for his passport. And he said he pulled out the certificate from the president and that it had just been signed. He said, "Will this do, sir?" And they all congratulated him and put him through. And he said that was his redemption. The great moment. But
imagine
so
living through that.
That picture brings that back very vividly.
But did you have an interaction with him, with Arthur Goldberg later?
Well, oh yes, yeah. He became a little bit of an uncle figure. He was a little stuffy, a little kind of formal, but he was brilliant, wonderful values, and he did the story that I learned a lot from. That he spent an evening with me. That's him. He had a stand-up desk, that I remember. He was one of the early people who had a stand-up desk. He sat down one day, we got him talking, and told the story of how Lyndon Johnson had persuaded him to leave a Supreme Court justice spot to go to the UN and head up the United Nations in an effort to end the Vietnam War, how he had convinced him when a lot of people said, "Don't listen to Johnson, he's going to smooth talk you," and so on. But he told this wonderful story of how he had Arthur and Dorothy over for dinner, just the four of them at the White House. And he'd already prepped his wife and had Johnson's wife, Lady Bird, had called Goldberg and all this. And Lyndon says, Arthur, you're one of my favorite people, and I need you to serve your country and give up this and go and help me get this war settled the way we need to get it settled. And he was this, immigrant kid who loved what he was doing on the bench and on the Supreme Court and everything else. And the pressure that Johnson could mount, he was charming and all this Southern flesh, and he would do it. And then of course, not only did he give up the post, he went to the UN, and then Johnson did not, on the Vietnam War, he'd done a lot of wonderful things, Lyndon Johnson, as president, especially in the civil rights field. But on the Vietnam War, he went crazy. And so anybody who was sort of a dove on that or peacemaker became suspect to him. And he sent my father, Monsignor Higgins, a Catholic, and Martin Luther King's Day over to Vietnam to do a report, a clergy report. And they went over together and came back and wrote a scathing report on what was going on in Vietnam from their point of view. And Johnson never talked to any of them again. He was cut off completely.
What a story. What a
Yeah.
connection. But your father spoke about that. I mean, you had these conversations about that. What did?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. No. It just it taught me a lot about that we all have these moments where you've got to pick a lane in a life. Even they won't always be as dramatic as Arthur Goldberg's moment. But as I've traced the history of adults that I admire a lot, it almost inevitably comes up that they reached that crisis moment where there was a conflict in your values, or something where you had to make a decision that was for which your faith or your or the dictates of your responsibility didn't answer the question. I mean, and it becomes the true dilemma. Which way do you go? Which path do you take? And I remember that great Walter Whitman poem. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us in public life get through without generally some kind of crisis, and then also some moment where we have to make a difficult decision, and then never knowing whether it was the right one or not. Some people have the pleasure that they clearly made the right decision. They don't. Others, it's not so clear. And then to a few, it was the wrong choice. And that the old saying of like Kierkegaard, leap and the safety net will appear, doesn't necessarily follow very good. Some people leap and they fall a long way. So it always fascinates me with characters or people as I unfold it. What was that? And for some people, it's very personal and not something they jump. For others, it's just sort of the moment that what a dull life you live. Really, if you live your life with your butt in a tub of butter and you just, you don't have to face those things. But it often it's easy for people who have a faith or a credo that answers the question for them, that they can go to. It's much harder when that choice of which path to take is just a mixed value decision that just gnaws at you. And so anyway, that story by Goldberg is a great one.
But what you said then is very important. I mean, that because that is when everything that you grew up with, that value system that you grew up with, and everything, that's the point that is the test. That is what will take you wherever it's going to take you, and then you have to live with that decision. So, did you take it because you wanted to take it, and you tested against everything, or you took it because the world around you wanted you to take that and you did not understand it? So I think that's where you're brought up to that point, and that's you get tested there. I think that's what you have to do. Yeah. Yes. So you have to live with it, and as long as you've heard your heart, soul, spirituality, so everything might fall into place. This we could not place. When was this taken? Where would this be?
Beats me. These are old pictures of my parents on trips. I think that's one of his brothers. My father had 3 brothers, and they that was the Al who owned a clothing shop up in Portland. And I always, yeah. Anyway, they didn't stay that close or whatever, and they weren't ever close uncle figures to us or any of the kids. But they're somewhere on vacation.
But what about the other brothers? I mean, the other brothers, did you?
No,
did you meet
they
the
were
others?
never important figures. No, we knew them, saw them once in a great while at a family reunion, but they were not.
But
My father didn't stay that close to them.
Where were they living?
None of them. They owned one repaired upholstery. One owned a clothing store. The third, Sam, was a lawyer, and I guess a fairly decent lawyer up in Portland, Oregon. But none of them were prominent in their field, or none of them achieved anything like what my dad did. And they didn't stay particularly close, the 4 of them, which is sort of interesting. I don't know why. Partly geographic. They all stayed on the West Coast. My dad moved to Chicago. But they were not an important part of our growing up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so swimming lessons. Did you need swimming lessons? I thought you were just born in the water kind of thing.
No.
But where are you?
I think that's a baptism, not a no.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know where the hell I am. I don't even see myself in the pictures.
So this one we see.
These are just camp pictures of taking tennis lessons.
People might have also forgotten these wooden rackets.
Yeah.
They also disappeared. This another camp thing?
Yeah.
But again, what were the activities?
I don't know. They're just old camp. I mean, any kid who went to a summer camp did the same kind of stuff. These are just, I don't know where they came from, but they're just a roll of pictures on. Look at that hair. Look at that. Look at that. Look out.
Look at the look also. The look given to the camera.
Look out.
Yeah.
So
this is where you're most comfortable, behind that wheel.
Yeah, I guess.
So this is interesting.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful picture. That's my mother's family. My cousin Liz, who I'm still close to, who's 91 now, I think. And the older niece, look at me, I'm up. This is a summer in Belvedere, and look at Ruth. Ruth at that age, my older sister, she looked like Elizabeth Taylor. She had these beautiful blue-green eyes, and she just gorgeous. And I always thought she looked like Elizabeth Taylor. And then here's the twins. Look at them. There's Debbie, and there's Judy. On the bookend ends with my father with the daughter of Anne of Elizabeth there, and there's our grandmother Adela. She's still alive, and my mother's brother Henry. These are all the kids during that period. That was a wonderful summer. We were in Tiburon, there. It was the summer before I went to Stanford for college, and this was my older cousin Freddie. He was cool, and he played gin rummy with me, and he'd loan me when I was in college. I didn't have a car the first 3 years, and he'd loan me his car once in a while for a special date, and he was a good pal. He was kind of a fun guy, and but Elizabeth, his wife, who went a different way, he became kind of a caterer and kind of a more Hollywood kind of person or whatever. And Elizabeth here, she moved to Hawaii and taught love transfers to people. It was some kind of quasi cultish thing, but always maintained her big heart and great spirit. And to this day, we just admire her resilience, and she just cares a lot for people. Really, really like her. Elizabeth. Yeah, and they're just all people that had some impact in life. And Dibsy, she and I were in Europe together times, so they're all important figures. These were nice times.
But where has this been taken? Where would this place be?
Oh, it was taken at Freddie's house, as I recall. Yeah.
I mean, where?
Yeah, we were all there. We were all there for a barbecue or whatever it was.
Okay, so in Chicago. This any?
No, pass. Move on. I don't know what that is. Oh, that's an important picture. That's a very important picture in my life, actually. On the left is David. On the right, you're right. The other young guy there is David Kennedy, and he's been a lifelong friend. We're still very close friends. He won the Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Four Defining Decades of America. He's a fellow hiker and fisherman together, but a great thing. Taught still does at Stanford, history at Stanford. But we were together at Stanford in Italy. We're in some Viennese castle somewhere when we took this picture, but we were lucky enough to be in the first class at Stanford that went for a 6 or 7 month journey to Italy to study. And that was our professor, Wayne Vucinich, who's now deceased, but was a great expert on law of, he's Serbian, I believe, and he was a great expert in the history of the whole Byzantine era and the regions there. And he used to take tours up the Danube, people, and give lectures on history. He's a wonderful guy. Became kind of a friend later life. He was older than us, but he was an advisor to both me and David were great advisors. And this was the beginning of a really an important voyage to me. I was very lucky that I was in that first class at Stanford that went to Italy. And it was there that I awakened intellectually some and became interested in a lot of things that I hadn't been before. And it was just a marvel. I remember getting letters back from my parents saying, because I wrote them a lot from there, saying, you're finally getting it. You're finally, all the money we put into your education is paying off. But it was a wonderful introduction, and he was a great teacher. And then David there became one of the really great. He's been called to the White House for President Bush and others to talk about American history, and but he's a fun guy and a darn good fisherman. And we have these dinners once or twice a year where just the two of us go to the same restaurant down the peninsula and meet, and we just have these wonderful conversations. And I marvel at his true intellect, and his use of the English language is as both precise and as articulate as anybody that I read his book. And it's a fairly lengthy book, and every page is like it's sculpted. He's a remarkable guy, fun guy too.
But I'm just thinking, David, Danny, why are you not dressed for the occasion?
I don't know. I don't think I ever liked wearing ties. I never did. So I eschewed them whenever I could. I mean, don't let David fool you. Like, wait a minute. 1 month later, we went to Elba together on a boat, and we decided we wanted to ride with the bandits on the island of Elba. And we went off the boat and we rented these horses to see if we could find the bandits. Luckily, we didn't, or they would have killed us. And then David got so drunk on the boat back to Rome that we had to carry him off the boat. and so we got David and I got a lot of trouble together. And he's responsible for my one arrest.
That's interesting.
When we went. Well, we got arrested at the circus in Gela, Sicily. And I don't know if I can ever expunge it from my record, but we broke out of the audience. We were watching a circus, and once a year the circus comes to Gela, Italy, and David and I were together there, and we actually had on little sport coats because we'd been at some event at the U.S. magistrates there, and the clowns were riding these mules around the circle of the. And David looked at me and I looked at him, and we didn't say a word, but we bolted it out of our seats and we went down and ran on the thing, and the clowns ran away. And we each jumped on a mule, mine backwards. So I was holding onto the tail. He was riding more elegantly. And then the gendarmes came out to chase, and they were chasing us around. And the crowd was standing and roaring. They thought it was a paid act. And that the gendarmes finally caught us. They grabbed us both by the neck, and the crowd booed as they dragged us off. And they took us to the Navy brig, because they assumed anybody down there was in the Navy, where they had a Navy post, and they insisted on booking us at another thing. And then they let us go out on the Navy didn't want to take us home. They just left us out there, and we had to hitchhike home. And it was our moment. And David, at my 50th birthday, his toast was that it was really a metaphor for my life. Sort of riding ass backward through life and holding on to the tail. It was very funny. He did a whole toast on that incident together. But those were great times of exploration and excitement and mischief together. We had a lot of fun.
I'm just thinking, what would have come on to both of you to actually do that? It's really quite a step to take.
We were crazy. We did something crazier that year when we went to. This is why I became a mediator. We went to. I put together this trip to Russia. I talked about it in 1961. It was pretty rare to be going to Russia, but we put together with an Italian guide a trip for about 20 American students studying in Italy and in France. And we got visas and all that. And we went to, and it was during the period of the total Cold War and the curtain. And it was very exciting. We were one of the first groups of students that got to meet with students on, but we were very carefully surveilled and very carefully watched. And without made a story, we were in a cafeteria one day, he and I and our third of the three musketeers, Harry Page, and someone came up to us and handed us a satchel. And in it was a bunch of papers. And he said, "Get this to the West." And we got it. And we didn't know whether we were being set up or whether this was really important. And we opened up the portfolio, and there were all these blueprints. There it is. Oh yeah, great. That's where we were. Those are pictures we took during those days next to the Kremlin. So we debated whether we should just throw them out or what it was, but they had all these blueprints and technical stuff in there, plus little maps. And we thought maybe we were going to save the West. So we decided we were going to smuggle them out, and we each took a third of the pages and strapped them on our backs. And they got through customs first, and then I got stopped because they wanted to look at my diary that I'd written. They were following me, and they saw me writing a diary and so on. And I thought all someone had to do was come and put his hand on my back, and I was do it. We had made a pact, by the way. If one guy got caught, the others would turn themselves in. We made that pact in blood. But I finally got through. They took my diary. They said, "There's stuff in there, can't do. Go ahead." And I didn't fight with them. And we got on the train, and I went to the bathroom. All the pages spilled out. I was picking them up in the bathroom. And long story, we got train ride back. We got to Vienna. We took it to the embassy in Vienna and said, "Please get these to the West." And we left them off. We never knew what it was. We went on our way. And when I got to Chicago, my home, there was someone from Naval Intelligence with a note, "Please call in the morning." And I went down there and I thought, oh, what, they're going to give us a parade. We turned over the nuclear secrets to him. And he goes in and he says, "Do you realize what you idiots did?" And I said, "No." He said, "This guy owns a bicycle factory, and he was angry at the Russians for not giving him his parts. And so this is all about the bicycle factories in Russia. It has nothing to do with anything." And he started showing me the pictures of it. He said, "And you guys could have spent 30 years, we would have had to send troops in to get you or something." He said, "What kind of idiots were?" And then I ended up working for him for the summer, which was a great experience, and relaying to this incredible naval intelligence officer what we had learned in the satellite countries and in Russia. And so it turned into a great experience for me. But David was a part of that. We were prepared. We were prepared for the glory of saving the West. And all we did was bring them a disgruntled bicycle owner's work.
Imagine, look, whatever your intentions, look at the intentions and look at sacrificing yourself. Maybe you had to. Look, imagine all that. Look, what you were going through. Patriotism at its best. Amazing.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking, Danny, is that actually we should take a break at this stage. because it'll get
Okay.
too long for you and it'll be too tiring for you because we can all be continued in another episode. That's
All
what I
right.
think. That's what I think, because I'm sure.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It's, I hope I'm not, I hope I'm not boring you or taking too long, but this is a very therapeutic for me. So I sort of enjoy it. I don't,
No, I'm enjoying this. So I don't want you to rush it now because obviously you've gone
All
through
right.
quite a lot of time. That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Whatever. Well, I've
Yeah,
never said that.
and-
I never said that on my show. I let things continue. I am not a problem, but I'm just thinking that because there's so many memories and so much is going through your mind, I would rather have a more comfortable situation
Me-
starting again.
Me too. And what happened after that Italy thing and my choice of law school over going to the rabbinate, following my father's footsteps as opposed to going into the law, and then what happened in the legal career that brought me to mediation.
So
It's
it's a good point.
Real important things of what made a mediator or whatever I
No.
turned into. Okay.
So the
Yeah.
evolution. You
Well,
evolved.
That's an awful kind name to give it to, but I'll take it. I'll take it, Vikram. And thank you for your patience and your
No.
probing questions and the courtesy that you've extended to us and to Linda. And thank Linda for digging up those embarrassing pictures of me and nude on the blanket with my sister. Can you believe that? And my sleeked down hair. I mean,
But I'm just thinking, which building was it? What is the building that you took this photograph in? I mean, where was this taken?
it was taken in we went on one of our trips from Florence. We were based in Firenze, and he took us to look at castles and things in Vienna. So that's at a castle in Vienna.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Perfect. So obviously, Danny's been it's really enjoyable going through all of this, and it's taking us through that world, which of course there are lots more stories I'm sure which we'll bring out. So we can do it whenever it's convenient for you. That we can.
You tell me, and I'll do it. And I want to support what you're doing out there in the world, and got your wonderful email the other day and so on. But you need to continue your voyage in doing this.
And you have to participate in those events. What I'll do is, if that conference that's coming up, you definitely have to be part of that. I'll take you through those topics, which I did send you a mail, but I'll do that. So what I'll do is I'll cut the live stream here, and then I'll take you through that, and I'll fix a date with you. So thank you very much, Danny. Wonderful talking to you.
And we'll fix the date, and then on your thing that you have coming up, your workshop and so on. You should maybe, if you shot me just an email on if there was a day or a time that it would be that you would want me to show up and to be supportive of it, I would do everything I could to make.
Don't leave right now. I'm just cutting the live stream. I'm going to talk to you. I'll show you the schedule.